Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to my booktube channel. It's Kat. I have not been on booktube for like a year and a half now, so I'm gonna tell you about every book that I've read while I've been gone. And unfortunately, I haven't read as many as I would like to. That's kind of why I left booktube for a while. I started a new job, I stopped reading as much, but I still read, clearly. And I'm very excited to catch you guys up on what I've been reading, what I've been enjoying, and start getting back into making videos again and telling you guys more about what I'm currently reading. So we're gonna work from the last book that I told you guys about up until the most recent book that I just finished yesterday. So the last video I made where I really discussed the books I was reading was a June wrap up, so June 2023. So we're gonna start with everything I read in July. And that is gonna start with Ellen Hildebrandt's The Hotel Nantucket. This was a great read for the beach. Would I have read it otherwise? Probably not. It's not quite my style. It's a little bit too just straight up fiction for me. It does deal a little bit with ghosts, but not really. It's kind of weird, not my favorite. But it was really enjoyable and it served its purpose, so 4 stars. Next up, I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, and I gave that a 5-star. Looking back, I'm probably gonna say that was more of like a 3.5 star because I don't remember a damn thing about that book. All I know is that it was a Western romance, and at the time I thought it was really cute, and I really wanted to read more Western romances, and you'll see that. Next up, I read Unravel Me by Becca Mack, and take a look at that. If you've watched my booktube videos before, you know how much I love the Playing for Keeps series, and I finally got some paperback editions. I had to order them from Thrift Books because they were only available in Canada, but as of this week, they're available in the United States at Barnes & Noble. So, on to Unravel Me. I gave this book 4 stars, which out of all the books in the series, this is the only one I didn't give 5 stars to. I think it was just a little too ticking the boxes of Instagram book talk for me. Some of the like cliches and tropes that were in it were not quite my style. I don't really love single parent romances. Because I'm not a parent, maybe I feel I don't connect with them as much. But it was still a really great read. It still had the same feeling that all Becca Mack books do, hence why it was still a 4-star. Next up, I read Flawless, which is the only book I've ever read by Elsie Silver still. And I gave that book 3 stars, another kind of Western romance. Not totally my thing, but I'm feeling lately as I've been walking into Barnes & Noble, like it could be my thing again, and I might give it another try. So comment down below what your favorite Elsie Silver book is, and maybe I will give one of them a go because I know she is like a super trendy author at the moment. Next up, I did a reread of New Moon from the Twilight Saga. And this is actually the first copy of New Moon that I ever purchased in, I think like 2012. So it was $7.64 at Walmart at the time. So whatever the price is now, inflation is crazy because this book was $7.64 at Walmart when I purchased it. And it says $10.99 on the back. Hold on. The list price of Twilight is now $16.99. So I don't have much to say about this other than the fact that it's Twilight. And if you know anything about me, you know that I absolutely adore the Twilight series. So 5-star. Then I started feeling a little sci-fi. So I picked up the 100 series, which is one of my favorite TV series. If you have not watched it, please go watch. It's about a bunch of teenagers who are like criminals in space who get sent down to make sure that the Earth is safe to live on again. And basically they have to like rebuild an entire civilization. If you hated the way that that series ended, specifically with one character, read the books. You'll be so much happier because I don't want to tell you what the ending is, but if you know, you know. The ending is so much better in these books, and because they're like the most YA of YA, they will take you literally like 5 seconds to read. I gave all of these 5 stars because I give stars for enjoyment, not necessarily the quality of the book, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of the 100 books. After that, I decided to really switch things up and pick up Addicted for Now, which is the 3rd book in the Addicted series. I had to double check. And I gave this book 3 stars. I have a book about reading the 1st book in this series, and I also talked about the 2nd book in this series, which I think is terrible. Why I keep reading these books? We'll never know. But as you'll see in a minute, I own almost every single book in this series. So I have in the intention of reading them all. I just haven't finished that yet. I just think these books are so toxic and so terrible and nothing like a relationship I would ever want in my life. Next up, we have another reread, and that was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I'm also putting out this video around the time that the movie came out, so if you've seen the movie, comment down below, tell me what you thought about it. I actually enjoyed the movie a lot. I thought they did a really good job adapting it. There are a few tweaks I would make, but now is not the time to get into that. I do enjoy this book quite a lot. I know Colleen Hoover has a lot of controversy, but I love the book. Next up, I read Obsidian, which is the first book in the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I gave that book a 5-star. And I've actually been seeing this book pop up in Barnes & Noble again, which is really interesting to me because this book was published like quite a while ago and it wasn't that popular to my understanding. I don't even really know how I stumbled upon it, but it's like Twilight but aliens. Like it has very much like an enemies to lovers, but the kind of enemies to lovers where it's like they don't hate each other. They're just like weirdly distant from each other. Except this is the entirety of the first book. There's never like a come together moment. And they're like aliens, but it has the same feel as Twilight. So if you like Twilight and stuff like that, definitely give the book a try. Next up, I read After by Anna Todd. Now, I did read the After series when it was Harry Styles fan fiction originally, and I remember liking it, but I didn't remember really anything about it. I've seen the movies. I think the movies are god-awful, but I wanted to read the book. And I gave the book 4 stars. I thought it was actually really enjoyable, and I started the next book, but I only got like 100 pages into it, and I DNF'd it. I need to go get water. I'm dying. Next up, I read some books that were super out of my comfort zone, and that is Red Rising and Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. These books are sci-fi, and if you know me, you know I don't really like sci-fi. I actually think that sci-fi is like my least favorite genre. But I had heard so many amazing things about Red Rising that I decided to give it a try, and I did give it 5 stars. I love books about like politics and war, and this book gave me everything with that. It has a super interesting premise. It's about this guy who's kind of like going undercover into like high society to try and like figure out what's going on and help the lower class people. I don't remember a thing about this book. Like, for all I know, this book and this book are bled together in my mind. I just know that I didn't like this book as much. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was like a meh continuation. I will probably eventually read the 3rd book, but I will have to reread these because I don't remember enough about them to jump into that. Next up were a bunch of rereads. So I read Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, and then I read House of Sky and Breath. Love these 2 books. You can go back on my booktube to get full reviews about these, but they're some of my favorites. But the reason I read those was because House of Flame and Shadow came out, which was super exciting, and I just adored this book so much. A lot of people did not enjoy this book as much as they enjoyed the previous Crescent City novels, but this one was actually just as good to me. I gave it 5 stars. I thought that it wrapped things up super nicely. I know supposedly there will be a 4th book, but I don't think that it's necessary. I think this is perfect as a trilogy. This gave me everything I needed it to be. So this was a 5-star, and I would totally recommend you check it out. Then I jumped into another very loved series, and that is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. So I read Once Upon a Broken Heart, The Ballad of Never After, and A Curse for True Love. I only have these 2 because the 3rd one never came out in a paperback that matches these 2. I gave Once Upon a Broken Heart 3 stars. I thought it was a poorly written novel. I don't like books that are written to be series. I prefer it to like be a really solid novel that can be expanded upon. The plot was all over the place, but I liked the plot enough to keep going. So that's why I read The Ballad of Never After, which I enjoyed significantly more, and I gave this a 4-star. And then I also gave A Curse for True Love 4 stars. I thought that that one was the best one by far, and it took an otherwise kind of bland series to the level of being like, oh my god. Next up, I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I've never read Ali Hazelwood before. The Love Hypothesis has just never really interested me, but I saw her diving into the paranormal space, and I got so excited. So I did, in fact, pick up Bride, which is a vampire werewolf romance. So as we mentioned with Twilight, right up my alley. I thought the Bride was cute. It was really funny. It was well written. Her prose was just like really good for being as like cheesy of a book as it was. However, the smut in Bride, no thank you. Bad, 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 bad. If you know anything about werewolf stuff, disgusting. Ew, I don't like it. I give that 4 stars. Next up, I read One Dark Window and Two Twisted. And these are my perfect little angel babies, okay? This is the best fantasy duology series, whatever, I've ever read in my entire life. The magic system is immaculate. The romance, immaculate. The ending, immaculate. Everything about these books is so perfect. I cannot recommend them enough. I want to read them right now as I'm talking about them again. They're perfect for fall or winter. So this, if you're just hearing about these, if this is going to convince you to read them, do it now because they're so atmospheric. Like the fantasy world that you are thrust into is incredible, incredible. They're just absolutely perfect in every way. Obviously, they both get 5 stars. Next up, I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and I thought that book sucked. I hate paranormal books, and I didn't know it was paranormal, so it was super boring, and then it was paranormal, so I was like, whatever. Moving on. I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I like Emily Henry. I'm not like an Emily Henry girly. I think she's okay. I gave that book 3 stars. Next up, I read Hot House Flower by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is Cowboy Sisters number 2. And this one, I can't even remember. This book gets a 2 stars for me because I think the Reich and Daisy thing is disgusting. They discuss the fact that he thought she was attractive when she was younger. I just think that they should have not done that. They could have helped themselves. They could have made this work and they chose not to. So 2 stars. Next, I picked this up at a used bookstore and I was like, whatever, I'll read Twisted Love. I've never read that series before. And I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was cute, fun, like quick, just a good romance book. Next up, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and that book was adorable. Another one of my favorite fantasy reads, and especially fantasy duologies are just having the moment for me. But I thought that it was absolutely incredible. It was written beautifully. The story was beautiful. The romance was beautiful. Immaculate, loved it, 5 stars. At the same time that I was reading that, I decided to read Thrive, which is literally just a retelling of the events that happened in Hot House Flower. So that was kind of weird. Super boring, 2 stars. Then I finished up the Divine Rivals duology by reading Ruthless Vows, and I thought that book was very cute as well, but a 4 star because it was very predictable, whereas Divine Rivals was not predictable for me. Next up, I decided to go back to my roots and read a hockey romance, so I read The Chase, which is the first book in the Briar U series by Elle Kennedy, the queen of hockey romance. And I gave that book 3 stars. I loved the male main character. I thought that he seemed super cute, super cool. I thought that our female main character was a little bit annoying. And I thought the story was a little bit annoying because she just made stupid choices. 3 stars. Next up, I read Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King book I've ever read. And holy shit, it was so good. This book is literally the best book I've ever read in my entire life. And I'm saying that with my whole fucking chest. So don't even. I've seen so many Stephen King ranking books where Stephen King, like guys that love him, rank this book at the way bottom. But that's just so wild to me. This book is so incredible. It's a fantasy book, but it's so like the writing style. I mean, it's Stephen King. You know, you expect like high quality writing and he fucking delivers. It's perfect in every way. I mean, the first time I read it, I devoured this book and I recommend it to every single person. I was on such a kick of reading on my Kindle, especially when I purchased this book. And I went and bought it because from the day that I started reading it, I read like 100 pages and I was like, I need the physical copy of this book. Like, I just know this book is going to make such an impact on me that like I need to own it. Next, I read The 7-Year Slip, which I know is a ton of people's favorite book or like one of their top ones of the past couple of years. And I gave that book 4 stars. I thought it was like fun, but I didn't really connect with the characters and I didn't really feel very emotional about it. Like I could read it and recognize that it was a really good book, but it just didn't like grab me the way that it seemed to have grabbed a lot of people. Next, I picked up The Risk by Elle Kennedy, which is the Briar U number 2 book. and I gave this one a 4 stars. I thought it was better than The Chase. This one is like a rivals to lovers, and I thought that was really cute. I think that this girl's whole backstory was just way more like thought out, way more explained. I thought their romance just made sense. Like the third act breakup in this book was something that I could actually foresee happening to people and like them getting over. It wasn't kind of just like thrown in there to progress the plot or whatever. It felt necessary, and that's why I give this book 4 stars as opposed to the 3 stars that the other one got. Next up, I read The Institute by Stephen King because I loved fairy tale so much, and this book was a 4 star for me. I just think that Stephen King does such a good job of tying up loose ends that like you can't leave one of his books and be like, that was bad, because they're just not. Like, they just aren't bad. But this book was great. I love how much he really embraces being in the mind of a 10-year-old who has like such advanced intelligence. You feel like you are truly in his brain, like thinking his thoughts, going through this journey with him. It's incredible. It's a little bit sci-fi, but it doesn't feel sci-fi. So I don't know, 4 stars. Next up, I read Salem's Lot, which I gave a 1 star. I hated this book. I thought that I would try an older Stephen King since I'd only read modern Stephen King, and I hated it. Yeah, it was so not good. I'm prepared for people to be really mad at me, actually, but I'm gonna say my opinion. I thought that this book didn't have much plot. I thought it was purely character driven, and that's just not the kind of books that I'm into. I thought it would be scarier. It wasn't really scary to me. It was just like weird. And I ended up DNFing with about that much left, a little bit less than that actually, because I read a bit on my Kindle. I just could not get through this book. But I read so much of it and I committed so much time to reading it because it took me forever that I counted it as a read. And the most recent book that I finished reading was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, but I'm not going to tell you anything about my opinions because I'm reading the rest of the series right now and I want to tell you about it once I finish. So that's where I've been and that's what I've been doing. I hope you guys enjoyed this 1.5 years worth of wrap up. If you did, please subscribe and like this video because there will be more from me, I promise. So I will get back to it and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about these books in the comments. And I will see you guys very shortly. Bye!